Welcome to The People I Play With. This is the show where I interview, well, the people I play with. I'm your host, Jesse Bernico. Today's guest is Kodi Gonzaga. Kodi and I met through a pair of local meetups that are about games and game design. And most recently, we've played a game of 10 Candles. But before we get into the specifics of that game, I want to talk about you as a player in general. I want you to tell me, what do you think your strong suit as a player is? What does Kodi bring to the table?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the things that I bring to the table as a player is a weight of emotionality. Like, I am that person who will not only make an extremely tragic, messed up, sad, and emotionally riveting character, but I will not shy away from playing that character to the full extent of the rules. I am in tabletop games because I want to have some form of emotional catharsis. So I think another thing I bring to the table is I have a lot of raw charisma. I will bring that emotionality to the table, and then people will follow my lead, and then I end up getting the experience I want, and everyone says they have a great time. I assume they're not lying to me. I think that's something I bring to the table.
I think in that emotionality, you mentioned something about playing into tragedy a bit. Do you feel like you are a tragic person, or that tragedy is an emotion that speaks to you?
I definitely love stories about tragedies. I don't know if I would consider myself a tragic person. I know some of my friends would. There's something very healing and very nice to me about being able to experience all of the grief and anger and sadness that comes with a tragedy, and being able to experience it in a space that is a story. It's a safe way to experience those emotions. I really like stories that are about tragedies because they're a way to sort of process those kinds of emotions. I do like happy stuff, but I am usually not like a sugary saccharin kind of person.
So, do you think there's anything you could personally improve as a player?
I try not to hog the spotlight. I've gotten a lot better at not hogging the spotlight. And I've gotten a lot better at relinquishing control over things that I should not have control over in terms of the story. I started writing my stories down when I was 9. There's a lot of control you have over stories when you're just writing them alone in your room. And playing TTRPGs has helped me learn how to relinquish some of that control. I still feel the urge every once in a while and I have to rein it back in. Because I come to the table with such a clear idea and understanding of what I want from a game generally, it's hard for me to adapt on the fly when I go into a table expecting one experience, and then it turns out that that's not the experience everybody else wants, and I get kind of sad and upset about it, which is something I should probably work on.
So, 10 Candles is a horror game about the whole world going dark at once and these nebulous creatures stalking everyone. And there's a whole lot of theatricality in this game. You play in a dark room that's only lit by these 10 candles. The candles go out over the course of the game. You make this last, message recording. It's ostensibly about survival, but everyone is guaranteed to die in the end. But I actually don't want to focus on all that crazy framework. I really want to talk about you and your character, Ash. So, in 10 Candles, there's this concept of moments. Moments are these player authored events that, if achieved, their character will find hope. And your character's moment was about proving their worth. And I want to start by asking, why did you choose that to be Ash's moment?
I have a hard time playing characters to their fullest extent if I don't have any way to connect with them. I always put a piece of myself into the characters I play if I want to play them to the fullest. And proving your worth, that's something very inside me, inside my soul. I constantly feel like I have to prove myself and I have to show everyone that I'm worth the time and the effort to engage with. I was given these two traits. I got incompetent and I got resilient. And I was like, how do I make these two work? So I started thinking up a character that was competent because they were put in a position they never should have been put in, because their parents wanted them to be a specific thing. And I was like, well, they're resilient too. So that's probably like they have more in them than they think they do, but they don't believe that they do. So Ash proving their worth was very much Ash gets to realize that they aren't actually incompetent. Like maybe they are incompetent at the molecular biology that they were sent to grad school to do, but their strengths lie elsewhere, and that is okay. And being able not just to prove to everyone else around them that, you know, Ash can do things, but proving to themselves that they can do things, that I think would have given that character hope, and it also would have given me hope. It's deep and emotional. That's my trademark.
Well, it sounds like you're a person who plays very close to home. You're just like, what am I dealing with? Great, awesome. I'll just write it into this character.
It's true. Hey, TTRPG playing is just free therapy.
People talk about like, oh, I use RPGs, as therapy, and some people counter with RPG should not be your therapy group. But to me, I always find that dichotomy kind of weird because therapy is a very specific process for self-reflection, self-improvement. But also we're talking about self-expression. And like the notion that every novel an author writes is somehow a form of therapy seems a little misguided to me. The best art reflects the creator. And I don't see why RPG should be any different.
In the broadest sense of the term, I think all art is therapy, but therapy often, there's this idea that something is wrong and we need to figure out what the problem is and then make it better, make it go away, help whoever is getting therapy no longer deal with this problem. Like therapy is a process by which you solve problems, but it's deeply therapeutic to have an avenue of self-expression. And, you know, that can be whatever you want it to be, but stories have always been that for me. I would write them, I would tell them, I would act them out, I would sing them, and now I play them in TTRPGs. There is no such thing as unbiased art, and that is beautiful because every piece of art that everyone makes is an expression of themselves. You're not the same person you were at the beginning when you started creating it as you are when you're at the end when you're done creating it. And I think that can hold true for really good TTRPG sessions. It's almost like our mad attempts to grasp at an understanding of the human condition. Sometimes you get close, sometimes you don't, but that doesn't mean what you made wasn't worth making. And that's in and of itself something that's very beautiful and very profound.
And I think RPGs in particular are very powerful for that because they're so personal. It's kind of weird because we live in this increasing public facing life between social media and more people's like recording their plays, whether that's professionally produced or just, hey, I like to record my play and put it out there. But at the end of the day, an RPG is five people in a room together and no one need ever speak of whatever happens in that room ever again. So that seems to me like the ultimate ability to be able to say something really powerful and really personal that only the five of you maybe even care about. RPGs are an incredibly powerful form of expression and self transformation. So yeah, I think you're spot on with all of that. So speaking of that transformation, the moment that your character Ash had in this game manifested when Ash sort of discovered that these creatures were, devouring stars and were growing so large that one of them is, surrounding the entire Earth, blocking out the sky. And I want to know, did that work for you? Did you feel like Ash had proved their worth in that moment?
I don't know if Cody, felt like Ash had proven their worth, but I think Ash felt like Ash had proven their worth. I, as the player, knew going in, okay, this character is going to die. This character is not going to solve the problems. So I knew how Ash would prove themselves narratively was not necessarily the same as how Ash would prove themselves internally, emotionally, to like true to the character. Ash themselves did feel like they had proven their worth. I'm sure all the other people that were like, oh my god, you discovered this thing about the darkness, were like, oh yeah, this kid's proven their worth. I think it worked. And I think It was unsatisfying, but as a feature, not a bug of the game itself. As much as I love tragedies, tragedies are also about hope because a tragedy cannot exist without hope. You can watch a whole tragedy and you are still hoping that something good will happen at the end and it doesn't happen. I think narratively, I knew that Ash had to prove their work to themselves, and that was fulfilled. And then Ash, I don't want to say could die happy, but Ash wouldn't feel useless by the end.
I asked this question because as somebody who will just be like, well, here's an issue from my life, I'm going to fictionalize it or put an element of it or a piece of it or spin on it in this character. Um, when a game has something in it like 10 Candles where there's this artificial resolution point, like you have this moment, it will happen, we will resolve it some way. I often wonder if that works for somebody who is so emotionally invested where they're actually feeling the feels of their character the way you do. Because I feel like that's sometimes yes and sometimes no. So I was wondering how that worked for you here. And it sounds like it was more on the storyteller intellectual side. I'm not exactly like feeling it.
I play a lot of GM full, GM list, whatever you want to call them, games. And so many of those games force you to hold both the reality of your character and the reality of a storyteller in your mind at the same time. And that's not easy. And it takes a lot of practice. But now that I do it, I can't not do it. And so 10 Candles, even though it was GM'd and maybe I should have played more emotionally with Ash, I think my storytelling instincts were still there under the surface. I think Ash feels fulfilled. I don't know if the storyteller in me feels fulfilled.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I typically don't like to get into game critique and criticism in these interviews, but man, moments really bother me, which is why I wanted to talk specifically with you, especially since you relate to characters similar the way I do. I wanted your take on, hey, here's this moment that your character had. Did it feel like a moment, or was it just here's a story beat we played because we had to?
Yeah. I think it's honestly, I think it's hit or miss.
Now I want to talk about the baby.
Oh god. Yeah, I know the baby.
So in 10 Candles, between scenes, there's this ritual where the players can state truths about the situation. At one point, we introduced this woman, and during one of the truth rounds, a different player actually suggested that this woman had a secret. And then during another round, you introduced the idea that she was pregnant, and then had the misfortune of passing the truth round to me, and I added the detail that the father of this baby was one of the creatures. Now, when this baby was inevitably born, it was clearly not fully human, and there was some discussion about what to do with them. And Ash was really adamant that the baby not be harmed, but you did agree to turn the child over to the creatures out in the darkness. So tell me about your emotional relationship with the baby and why ultimately you opted to give it away. I want the process around the baby.
Oh my god. Well, first of all, the process around the baby was I went, dang, we need to do something with this woman character that's kind of just hovering. And I was like, she has a secret. What if the secret is that she's pregnant? And I was like, Jesse's gonna get this next. Jesse's either going to like do a different thing or totally hit this out of the park. And you did exactly what I thought you would do, which is make the baby's dad a creature of darkness and death and destruction. And I was like, yes. All right. So for context, I am mixed race. So I am half Filipino, half white, and I don't have a lot of connection to my Filipino heritage because my mom, who is the Filipino one, she's really assimilated into American culture. And I have a lot of feelings about being mixed race and being white passing. And so when the baby was born, that's a baby that is of two different species. And I was like, oh no, those emotions, they're coming up out of me. When I felt those things, I was like, all right, Ash is also biracial, and this is just gonna be a thing now. I'm playing true to me, and now it's true to Ash. There was so much empathy for this child that came out of totally left field for me. Because I was a molecular biologist. I was one of the people trying to solve the problem. And this baby could have been the golden egg of experimentation. And then we were going through the baby being born and the mom rejecting her baby and the nurses freaking out and everyone screaming about the baby. And it viscerally hit something in me. Just the horror of you're a baby, you don't know anything, but you do know that people don't love you. That really hit something in me. And I was like, I can't experiment on this baby. No way. Absolutely not. I don't think Ash or Kodi knew what to do in that situation. Like, Ash, at the very least, knew for a fact that if we kept the baby, people are either going to try to kill it, the monsters were going to try to get in, there would be infighting. And so, like, Ash, thinking practically, was all right, well, the mom doesn't want the baby. We can't have the baby. Maybe if we give the baby to the monsters outside, they'll take care of the baby. And that's what Ash did. It was very interesting to see where you took the baby plotline. Because, you know, the baby started growing and then had a tantrum. It was a whole thing. But, like, there was, again, that shred of hope in a hopeless situation. Maybe this kid is the future. I think as much as I love tragedy, I am still a very hopeful person deep down. I think Kodi was hoping for us to explore more about like how they like interbred with humanity. If that's a common thing that they do on other planets, because we determined that they are like star eating like travelers through space. It was hard for me as a mixed race person to not immediately empathize with and feel for this little baby that we made up. That really informed Ash's reaction to the baby and what happened to the baby and how Ash interacted with the then giant baby later on. I think there was a lot of potential in that character.
That all ties back to this thing we were just talking about with the moments, because it almost sounds like, from a genuine feeling perspective, this baby's birth and what to do about it was more like the genuine moment that you felt for Ash, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And that's why I kind of wanted to talk about this baby birth moment, because I think I could tell watching you, and plus some things you said after we played, about how affecting it was for you.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely more emotionally invested in that plot line than I was in like Ash discovering the secret of the darkness.
I totally hear you, and I think everything that happened with the baby um, is really kind of critical. And you already mentioned that it ended up getting very large, and so let me explain for the audience. So the creatures eventually expose the baby to moonlight, and they make it grow really huge, and they try to weaponize it against you. And in some ways, the climax of this game was really about trying to control this hybrid child. You know, is it going to side with the creatures? Is it going to side with you? Instead, all you kind of really succeeded in doing was completely alienating it from either side. In the truly final moments of the game, the creatures decide to destroy this giant child, and you fail to save it. And in the aftermath, everyone is killed. That's when everybody died. Now, you were the last to die. You failed to save the hybrid child, but you did rescue the mother. And so, in total, I kind of asked this question: do you feel like Ash made a difference in any way that sort of like resonated with you in play?
I don't think so, honestly. And I think that's why I left that game feeling a little unsatisfied. And like here's the thing, the best tragedies you usually go into one knowing how it's going to end. It's so much about the journey, but it's also about like the hope that things can be better afterwards. I think at the end of the game, it felt like there was some disconnect in the story like at a certain point. Like I feel like what happened to the baby was left up to a dice roll, and that dice roll went in a direction that wasn't satisfying for the story, or at least not for the players at the table. and it kind of threw us all off. I think if Ash had connected with the baby more, I think Cody was hesitant to like do that because I hadn't made Ash being multiracial a thing, and I didn't want to like suddenly throw that into the pot and that be a big thing. I didn't want to hog the spotlight. I didn't want to be the only person that could connect with this baby. I think what would have helped me feel satisfied is if there was hope for the baby. I knew that my character was going to die, and I knew that the things that they did might not matter. There was still the hope that something they did would matter. And I think that hope got transferred to the giant baby, and then the giant baby did not come to anything. I think I just wasn't clear about conveying that at the table because I think I was scared of like hogging the spotlight. Playing is hard.
Where I think the disconnect happened when you first confronted the baby, it wasn't that the die had failed. You actually, I believe, had actually succeeded. You said, "Don't harm us," right? Like, don't harm us, and that role actually succeeded. But I, as the GM, had one narration, and in Ten Candles, you're supposed to spin it in some way where it's a mixed success. And to tell you the truth, this is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of mixed successes because I feel like they lead to this weird situation more often than not, where you get what you want, but we're actually still kind of dealing with like it doesn't represent like a full shift. It represents like a half shift. And I feel like that's what happened here and why it was like, oh, okay, you succeeded in the baby not attacking you, but it's not under control. It's still rampaging out there. And then that's what felt kind of weird and kind of awkward. Like, had you just succeeded in that moment, that would have felt better than me having to like, take the success but make it worse.
I wish I had been more clear about what I wanted with the baby because I think I was hesitating to say my full piece about being mixed race, being of two worlds, not feeling like you're enough for either one of them, but being too much of the other for either one of them as well. And then, like, the baby understanding and empathizing with that and realizing that it is not the only thing that feels this way, and like that would have been the success for me. So like what would have been a mixed success? The monsters start attacking the baby because now the baby is no longer no longer fully on its side, and then we have to defend the baby from the monsters. It's this big fight and we all tragically die saving the baby. I think it's hard to run games with mixed successes. It's really hard.
I agree. I find them kind of exhausting. I much prefer either it goes your way or it does not, right? Um, and we did eventually get there where the creatures do turn on the baby, and you did attempt to defend the baby. That role you did fail, right? And that is why they kill the baby.
It was very sad. It was very tragic.
And that's why I sort of asked, like, because it was kind of awkward there for a minute, because you have that fixed countdown of the candles, and as long as you still have candles you still have play, even if maybe you feel like the game should be over. And that's why I was wondering, like, in those final moments where you failed to defend the baby and then you just sort of all died running for your lives, on what level did that work and not work for you?
Yeah.
So do you have a question for me about this game?
I do. And if you could change one thing about 10 Candles, what would you change?
Oh God, that's a good question. It's weird because the thing that actually comes to mind is a thing that didn't come up in our game, which is that when you use your traits, you can reroll ones. And I've seen people get a success, but then want to reroll the ones to preserve dice because they rolled four ones or something like that. And and I've often thought that that's unnecessary in this game because we're gonna run the clock out no matter what. So like, why are you preserving dice? So I mean, the rule could just be like, hey, you're allowed to reroll ones if you failed, right? There's no reason to artificially preserve dice. Two, I don't really like the idea that the GM's is like rolling to take your narration away from you. This comes from an era of game design where this whole notion of who talks holds the power. Right? So therefore, if I succeed, ha ha ha, I'm taking your power from you. But that's silly, right? Who narrates the outcome shouldn't really matter because we've all agreed that you succeed. I play games all the time where I actually am narrating people's successes because it's just a straight normal GM game and they succeed and I go, yeah, and then you hit the monster and he bleeds to death. I'm technically narrating success all the time. This idea of who's speaking somehow holds power, I think is dysfunctional. I really do. I don't think it has anything to do with agency or any of that stuff that people like to throw around. So I feel like this idea that, oh, the GM is now gaining more and more dice because he might talk more often than you is kind of toxic.
I pinged that immediately. I was like, "Oh, you're getting dice," and then you explained why you're getting dice, and I was like, "Huh, that's interesting," because it immediately sets up this versus dichotomy between the GM and the players, and that's something I hate.
It's weird because like the text doesn't come off like that. The text doesn't come off with the idea that like, oh, the GM is trying to like beat you. Again, it kind of gives that mixed success vibe of like, oh, well, now that you're narrating, they should succeed, but it should snowball into something else or worse. That is so unnecessary. Like,
The skill of narrating a mixed success is a skill that is super learned and is super hard to master. I think that's where a lot of games have trouble is they're like they succeed but at a cost. They don't ever tell you what that means.
yeah, I completely agree. Those narration trading dice, I think at the end of the day in 10 candles, I just don't think it's necessary.
I would get rid of the dice entirely, but that's cuz I'm insane.
You'd have to figure out when the candles go out, right?
That's another thing. Like the fact that the candles go out on failures is like very specific. Like it's meant to snowball. It's meant to be like a it gets worse, it gets worse, it gets worse situation. But also we had that we started speed running our game and then we stalled out at like 6 candles.
And a lot of games that rely on the the bell curve of probability to in some ways run the no, I was going to say run the game for you, right? Like the idea is like, oh, you'll succeed a lot in the beginning and then it'll get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. That's true in a perfectly balanced world, which is not ours.
Those outlier results do and will occur. You end up in these weird states more often than you think you should. So just to begin to wrap up a little bit, I like to ask people, do you have a favorite recent game memory?
Honestly, let me look at my calendar and see what games I've played in the last 2 weeks. We're using Spire by Grant Howitt and Christopher Taylor. The session the morning of our 10 Candles game, I had my friend Maggie, who is an amazing role player. She's basically my sister. My character was really upset with hers for some reason. We had talked about it beforehand. We hadn't gotten into the actual argument itself outside of the game, but we had talked to each other about the stuff that I chose for out of character reasons, but this stuff is purely in character, so go ham on this stuff. And then we went at it in the game, and it was one of the most fun moments of roleplay I've had in a long time. I was just popping off, and she was also popping off, and it was awesome. So that's a very recent TTRPG memory that I fondly think of right now.
Cool. Is there a game that you either own or have heard of that you haven't had a chance to play that you really, really want to?
Thirsty Sword Lesbians, probably.
It feels very odd to me because it almost feels like a meta game. It feels like it's a game you're supposed to sort of layer over something else that you already have a very strong vision for.
It's a very explicitly queer story, but it's also a story about relationships and emotional intimacy, which you can throw onto any setting. And I actually really like that.
Yeah, I completely see that. Well, thank you very much for being one of the people I play with and for chatting with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to The People I Play With. Please join me in 2 weeks when I interview Sarah Christenshire about being a child witch in Broken Tales.